Hello and welcome to the Talk with Tariro. And we are now in the festive season. And as you know, when it comes to this time, this is the time that we bring you your different celebrities, public figures that you often hear on radio, television, or you read about them in the newspapers. And starting off, kicking off our festive series is Tony Friday. I'm sure most of you have heard him on radio. Tony is a broadcaster, but quite important as well. He is a mental health advocate. So today we are going to be having a chat with him so that at least you get to know him more. Tony, welcome to the talk.
Thank you, Tariro.
Yes, how's the festive season going?
Well, it hasn't begun for some of us because we are
You're still working.
in work mode.
Still in work mode. Hope,
Yes.
Hope you're going to be joining us as soon as we
Yeah.
start the celebrations.
Absolutely.
But for the sake of Zimbabweans, who is Tony Friday?
Whew. There's so much to that name.
Yes.
He's a father, and as you said, he's a broadcaster. It's been 20 years now in the industry. He's an entrepreneur. He's a brother. He's a friend.
Yeah.
He's a mental health ambassador. Yeah, I think that pretty much sums it all up.
Sums it up.
Yeah.
Yes. Share with us your broadcasting journey. How did it happen, and how has it been?
You know, from when I was a young boy, from as young as grade 5, I always had a serious passion for radio. I remember growing up in the streets of Western Triangle and Highfields. The one thing that we had as a family, because I grew up in a poor family, but the one thing that we had in the home was a little radio system. And we would fight over which station to listen to because there were only 4 stations at the time. I loved
Radio 1,
Radio 1, 2, 3,
and 4.
Radio 4. And I loved Radio 3 more than anybody in the family. But
I loved Radio 2.
Radio 2 that was the family favorite.
Yes.
So we would always fight over which station to listen to. So I would come back from school. And then if there was no one else at home, I would tune into Radio 3. And I would listen to the likes of Hosea Singende, Peter Johns, Kudzimarudza, Teach Matazes, and all of that. And I knew from a very young age that I had a passion for music, and I also had a passion for people.
Yeah.
And radio sort of became the culmination of all of those 2 passions. And then in 1995, when I finished my O-levels, I found myself on an interview with a man called James Maridadi. I had recorded a song, which is a story for another day. So
you're on Radio 3?
I was on Radio 3. And James Maridadi interviewed me, and for the first time in my whole entire life, I saw a radio studio for the first time.
Wow.
And I think that sort of just ignited the passion even more. And now I was more determined to end up on the radio. But it would take at least 5 more years for that to happen.
Wow.
I then had to go to journalism school. And then for attachment, I was attached to ZPC. And then eventually, I didn't even finish my attachment because 3 months into my attachment, I then heard there was an audition at Radio 3. I submitted a demo, went for the audition, and it took, I think, 2 more months. And then, boom,
you were there.
It happened. And that was in 2001. And from that time until now, I have not looked back.
Yes. So, and what slot were you on Radio 3, and how was it going? The listeners and all. Especially, I would want to hear your first time on
the radio.
You are now. Yeah, you are with. Were you there when we had those turntables, or it was now different?
I come from the vinyl era, from the vinyl cassette era.
Yes.
So my first time on the radio was horrible, I must say, because when I got in, it wasn't easy to get a slot on the radio because it was the only urban radio station in the country, and people don't just resign from radio. So there were not many spaces at the time.
We become part of the furniture.
So I literally bulldozed my way into radio. But I remember the first time that I did my slot on the radio. It was horrible. I was nervous. I was terrified.
Yeah.
But somehow, there's always that thing inside you
Yeah.
that tells you can do better, and that things will get better. And after that, I got another shot, which was a lot better than the first one.
Wow.
And then after that second slot, I sort of gained myself a permanent feature on the lineup. But I was doing midnights at the time, because when you're starting out, they call it graveyard.
Yeah.
So I was on the graveyard
And
slot.
that's the most difficult, because people are sleeping, and those
Exactly.
making sure that those who are awake do not sleep.
Do not sleep. So I did graveyard for about 6 months.
Yeah.
And then I graduated onto daytime radio. That was in 2003, I think.
Yeah.
2002.
Yeah.
And after that, started getting some slots covering for other people. And that's
Yes.
how the name grew.
Yes.
And then in 1996, I was poached by a radio station in Malawi called Power 101. Went to Malawi for 3 years. Poached again in SA with another radio station. And I was in SA for about 4 years. Came back, poached by ZFM when ZFM started.
Yes.
I was actually the first person to speak on ZFM when it launched. It was midday, 15 August 2012, when we went on air for the first time. That's how so to sum it all up, 12 radio stations, 3 different countries.
Wow. Yeah, that speaks volume about how good you are then as an individual.
I'm just so passionate. I'm passionate about it because radio connects you to people.
Yeah.
And with radio comes a lot of power and responsibility. So you have the power to change people's lives by the word of, world wars have been started by the word of the mouth. And I believe radio can be used to transform people's lives and to, plant seeds. So that's why I'm kind of more into the mental health, because I use radio to speak positively to people and to positively impact their lives. Yeah.
And Tony, when we're looking at radio, we have young people who are actually might be passionate. When radio, TV, people think it's all about the glitz and glam that it comes with. When it comes to somebody who wants to venture into radio as a young person and thinks it's actually easy, what would you say to them?
First and foremost, don't do it for the fame. Do it for the passion.
Yes.
You have to have a message. You have to have a vision. You can't just jump onto the radio for the sake of jumping onto the radio. You have to have a message that is going to positively impact people. So for me, radio just amplified things that I always believed in. So don't do it for the glitz and the glam. And also the glitz and the glam are overrated, way overrated. And I don't believe in the concept of celebrity and whatever. I believe we are all people. We all have an assignment. So if you believe you have an assignment that needs you to be on the radio, then by all means do it.
Do it, yes. We want to break to the next segment. So we're going to ask Tony Friday to close this first segment for us.
You're watching The Talk, and my name is Tony Friday. We'll see you in the next segment.
Welcome back. We continue with our festival episode, the first that's kicking off our festive season series. And we are with Tony Friday, a broadcaster as well as a mental health advocate. Tony, one thing that I want to ask you about when it comes to radio, and like the years that you were in radio, you broke into radio. You used to be alone in the studio, hey?
Yes.
And for me, it feels so awkward
Weird.
because with television, we've got camera people here, you've got other people who are with you. You're doing a graveyard shift, you are in there, and I can actually just physically see the Radio 3 studio, where it is and all. And you're just talking to yourself. How do you, because that's one thing that amazed me with radio people, where you're just by yourself and sometimes you're actually laughing. Anyone who's just seeing you might think that's a mad person.
Yeah. Radio is a mind game, right? It's an imagination game. So that's where the talent comes in. This is what separates amateur broadcasters from, professional broadcasters.
Yes.
Your ability to evoke imagination in people's minds
Yes.
by the words you speak. Because they say 70% of communication is non-verbal.
Yeah.
Only 30% is verbal.
Yes.
And so already you're only working with 30%, which is verbal communication.
Yes.
So you're using words to paint pictures in people's minds. They say radio is the theater of the mind.
Yes.
I've heard that's it. So when we train people for radio, we train them to speak to one person.
Yeah.
So when you're in that studio, it may seem like you're talking to yourself, but what you're really doing is you're using your voice through the microphone and all the fancy equipment to speak to that one person on the other side of the speaker. And the beauty of technology now is that people can give you instant feedback.
Yeah.
But when we started, the only way to get feedback from people was through the telephone, which was not throughout the show, by the way. So which meant for 90% of your time on the radio, you are just talking to yourself. But you're not really talking to yourself. You are speaking to the person on the other side of the speaker, and you are getting them to imagine what you are saying. So great broadcasters are storytellers. They are great storytellers. They are able to captivate your attention by painting pictures in their minds. That's how you're able to captivate people, because if you don't do that, you really are talking to yourself.
Yes.
So you're sitting in there, you are imagining a person who's on the other end of the line. You are imagining what they are doing, whether they are in bed or they are listening to the radio while they are driving, which is what a lot of people do. And what you're doing is you are getting into their situation and speaking to that situation. You're talking to that person who doesn't have money for the next meal. And you are saying things that will evoke hope in this person. You're talking to that single mom who's got 2 kids, who doesn't know what the next plan is. And you're speaking hope into that person. You're speaking to that driver who is traveling from Beitbridge to Mozambique. He's alone in the car, and you are his friend, because that's what radio is. Radio is companionship. Most people listen to radio by themselves, unlike TV, where you sit as a family and you watch it. So radio is it's still the cheapest mode of communication. You don't need much to listen to radio. You don't pay $1 to buy a newspaper or to buy a fancy TV screen. Radio is cheap. So when you're sitting in that studio, your job is to make people see what you're saying. And that's it.
And Tony, the advent of social media has really almost like made everyone a journalist, everyone a broadcaster, and people feel that everyone a talk show hostess. So people feel they can just sit there. But when listening to you, there's an art that comes with you to be able to execute that in a professional manner, in a way that will reach the targeted audience. Your comment on that, where I would say maybe our profession is being belittled in a way.
Not really. I think that, change is unavoidable. Radio has always been dynamic. Media has always been dynamic. I think social media is adding more value to what we've already been doing, because now it's one more platform for us to reach people. So if I had 20,000 people listening to me just on traditional radio, now I have 100,000 more to reach out through social media. So in my view, it may seem like social media is diminishing our work as journalists, but in actual fact, if you stay professional, it's one more platform for us to reach more people. So it's a great thing, and it's going to even evolve to bigger things and even more interesting ways to reach people. So I would say it's adding value to what we're doing. Because
but how do we use it in an ethical manner? Because with broadcasting, there are things that you can start airing after doing some confirmations today. This has now been. But with social media, as it happens, someone is there and boom, it's already there.
I would say stay ethical, stay professional. There's people who are hungry for people who do things with integrity. in ethical manners, in professional ways. So
Yes.
do not worry about what everybody else is doing. Stay professional, because there's a certain demographic of people who are looking for that kind of content. And if you stay consistent, you will reach out to those people. So don't worry about what everybody else is doing. Just stay on course. Do what you do best, and the right people will come to you.
Yeah, definitely the right
Yeah.
people will come to you. What would you say have been your successes and challenges as a broadcaster?
Successes? I think the opportunity to practice my profession in different African countries. I think that's been by far one of the things that I've been privileged to be able to do. When I left Zim to go to Malawi, it was a whole new different environment, a whole new different culture, a whole new different way of doing things. And one of two things will happen. Either you will sink or you will swim.
Yeah.
So it was an opportunity for me to do things in a better way. And even when I left Malawi to go to South Africa, because South Africa is very competitive, I was still able to break into the market and still be relevant. So it makes you grow as a person. So that's on the radio side, and also just the opportunity to influence a whole new generation of young broadcasters. I think to date I've trained more than 450 students. Through different institutions. We have online courses that we do. So that for me means so much, because it means that when I pass on, I have left something with the younger generation. And just the radio is a privilege. It's not a right. It's not something that must happen. But it's a privilege to be able to be given that opportunity to speak to people in numbers. So it's been such a blessing, and I'm forever grateful for that opportunity to have been able to do that.
All right.
Yep.
We will continue with our discussion after this short break. We continue with our discussion, and today we have Tony Friday. Tony, you being a mental health advocate, what pushed you to focus on mental health issues?
Life. Life has always been happening.
Yeah.
But I think I woke up to the reality of poor mental health in 2010 after going through a divorce. I'd been married for 5 years, living in South Africa with my family, but things were not working out well. So we went through the divorce in 2010. But what I didn't anticipate was what I went through, the trauma that I went through after divorce. I'm sure you know the kind of trauma that follows something like that. So early 2011, I found myself depressed, but I didn't know it was depression then, because I didn't have names for these things. I just knew that I wasn't okay, and I was in so much pain emotionally, which also manifested itself physically. And I didn't know how to make it stop. And it's different with physical health, because with physical health, if you're not well, you can go to a doctor, get pills, but there are no pills for emotional pain. I just knew that I wasn't okay, so I was struggling to work. I was struggling to eat. I was struggling to sleep. And I continuously struggled with thoughts of suicide.
Wow.
Because the pain was just so much, and I didn't know how to make it stop. I almost got fired a few times, got a couple of warning letters because my work was suffering. I couldn't focus. I just wanted to be alone all the time. I didn't want to talk to people. And one day, back in early 2011, using pills, I attempted suicide. But fortunately, it didn't work. But I was still in so much pain. And a few weeks after that, I attempted again. Only this time there was a friend who from church who was around, and just in time went to the clinic and I got help. But he suggested something which I thought was odd, and he said, "Why don't you go speak to someone at church?" So I went to speak to one of the pastors at church, This guy didn't say much. He would just ask me questions, sit there and ask me questions. So, how are you feeling? And all of those things. And I noticed something very strange which started to happen. The more I talked, the less I wanted to die. So the more I talked, the less I wanted to die. So there was this intervention that was happening, and less and less and less I didn't want to die. And a few months later, a friend of mine gave me a book, which I didn't even read until like weeks later. I had thrown it under the bed, and then one Sunday, I took it out and I started reading it. And that was the first time that I heard the word mental health. So from that time, I started to read some more, talking to a lot more people, listening to podcasts and doing all kinds of things. And I could feel myself getting better, you know. So no, I didn't go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist or whatever. It was all self-help, right? So it took me a few more years to really get back to being normal again. And then around 2015, I was talking to a coach. Someone was coaching me for business, and they said to me, your journey has been so fascinating. I think that you should start something that could help men,
other people,
because men don't talk about these things. So I started playing around with the idea of starting something, but I didn't know what exactly. It only took me until 2017 to actually set up an organization, which is called the Global Institute of Emotional Health and Wellness. So that became a platform for men, for students in universities, you know, who just go out to universities and just give free talks about mental health, just building an awareness of it, what it looks like in real life, you know, because for most of us, we just hear the word mental health, and it's so stigmatized that the moment we hear that word, we close our ears and we don't want to talk about it. But mental health is just like physical health. If I say physical health, nothing funny about that. But the moment you say mental health, because of the history of how mental health has been treated, a lot of people shy away from. But mental health is really the state of your mind and emotions, you know, as it affects the way you do life, you know. So started talking about it more, using social media, and then set up a company, started doing corporate mental health, going into companies and talking about how mental health is linked to productivity. But there's not a single area of your life that is not affected by your mental health. Your relationship with yourself is affected by mental health. Your relationship with other people, your physical health. 87 to 95% of people who are going to a doctor in this day are going there for stress-related conditions, which manifest themselves physically. So it's a very important conversation. It's a must-have conversation. So that's really all I've been doing. Just loving people through awareness, just empowering people with things that they can do. You don't have to be a professional to get help or to give help. You just have to be willing.
So we are in the festive season where we are looking at everyone actually being happy and all, but mental health issues are definitely bound to be cropping up. What are the mental health issues, possible mental health issues that people can face during this period of the festive season?
Financial?
Yes.
A lot of people are under pressure financially, and expectations versus reality. You know, festive season, you want to go all out for your family, and a lot of people may not be able to do that. But also, which I think is one of the biggest problems during festive seasons, is loneliness. A lot of people are lonely, but the loneliness is more amplified during holidays, because that's their reminder that they don't have, either you don't have a husband or kids, or they're out of the country or whatever. But just being lonely during festive seasons can drive people to depression and all of that. And, you know, people who don't have friends, people who have social anxieties and all of that. So, and just family conflict, you know, families getting together, and more. This one is a big one, which deserves a lot of attention. Like just pressure from social media to do certain things, you know, because you're seeing all kinds of things. Because social media makes us compare one another, and you're looking at, oh, so and so got this for Christmas, I didn't, and all of that. is potentially stressful for a lot of people.
Well, that's Tony for you, and it is the festive season, and as much as we are celebrating, there are some key issues that we need to bear in mind, and the issue of mental health is one issue that he is saying we need to take note. So in 30 seconds, your parting shot to Zimbabweans.
Love anchors mental health. Love is the base for all mental health, giving it and receiving it. So as we get into the festive season, love yourself and also love the people that are around you, whatever that means. It could mean giving you time, it could mean giving you substance, it could mean giving just attention, just giving company to, because there's a lot of people lonely around this time. So one single phone call or a text just to acknowledge someone could go a long way into just making feel seen and acknowledged and just loved. So love anchors mental health.
From the Talk with Tariro, we are saying happy festive season.